Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take material you're interested in and really get to the core of it for you. And today, you sent us In the Beginning It Was Not So by Ansere Francis, which is pretty interesting. It was actually written, over a decade ago.
Yeah, some time back, but only just got published in 2025. And he even notes that his own understanding has, evolved since he first wrote it.
Okay.
For this deep dive, our mission, if you like, is to pull out the key insights from this book, his perspective on God's original intentions, what went wrong, and importantly, how things can be restored.
Okay.
And we'll be focusing on some big themes he tackles: spiritual death, sin, poverty, sickness, and even physical death itself.
Okay, so where does he start? It's about God's original plan,
Yeah.
before anything went wrong. So Earth was meant to be a mirror image of heaven, basically.
Oh,
a place where God's plans just worked out.
perfectly. Yeah, the book paints a really significant picture of our purpose. Man was created as God's agent, almost.
Like a representative.
Through our spirit connected to his, we'd use our bodies to establish his will on earth.
That's quite a job description. But obviously things didn't quite go according to plan.
Which brings us to the fall.
Precisely. The book zeroes in on Genesis 2, the garden, the two trees. Specifically, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Right. God gives Adam the job, tend the garden, but there's this one rule: don't eat from that tree.
And the consequence is clearly stated: death. So that command about the tree, it wasn't like an arbitrary test or a threat, more a statement of reality.
Like, if you do this, this is the natural outcome. And that consequence was spiritual death, specifically, not immediate physical death, necessarily.
And this spiritual death, it opened the door for sin to come into the world.
It did, and that had massive cascading effects, not just for Adam and Eve, but for everything.
Like what?
Well, man lost his dominion, that authority he had. He became subject to the elements, things he used to rule over, and creation itself fell into chaos. Yeah, and even the ground itself started resisting him. Remember the thorns and thistles? The book argues that when the land is defiled by sin, it literally turns against its inhabitants.
Wow. So the fall fractured the whole relationship between humanity and nature.
Fundamentally, it wasn't just a personal slip-up.
Okay, let's dig deeper into this connection between spiritual death and sin then.
Right. Francis sees spiritual death as the entry point. Sin comes in through that door, and sin then leads towards physical death and ultimately eternal separation.
And he makes a point that everyone is born in this state.
Yes, a key argument is that we're all born spiritually dead. That initial connection is broken from birth until someone experiences being born again.
Which is that spiritual reconnection.
Exactly, a spiritual rebirth that restores the link.
What about the effects of sin? Does he talk about how long they last?
He does. He points to Genesis 15, the story of the Amorites. God tells Abraham their iniquity isn't yet full, implying sin's consequences can accumulate over generations, hundreds of years even, before judgment.
But righteousness has a longer reach.
He contrasts it, yeah, suggesting acts of righteousness can have a positive impact lasting potentially thousands of years.
Interesting. And what about the specific personal effects of sin?
He lists quite a few, drawing on scripture. Things like losing confidence and boldness, Adam and Eve hiding, right?
Yeah, ashamed. Shame is another big one he mentioned.
Shame and reproach, definitely. Cites Proverbs 14. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin condemns any people. He also says something pretty blunt. You won't find a genuinely happy person living in sin.
Because the way of transgressors is hard.
Exactly. Quotes that proverb, sin steals joy.
It affects our spiritual senses too. Makes it harder to connect with God.
Yeah, he talks about that, how sin can dull our ability to sense God's presence, hear his voice, feel his guidance. It's like static on the line.
Yeah.
Clinging to sin blocks us from stepping into our destiny.
Now here's a part that might make some people pause. The idea that believers can actually live without sinning here on earth.
It's definitely a challenging teaching for many, yes. But Francis states clearly he believes it's possible through God's power.
On what basis?
He leans heavily on 1 John 3.9. Whoever has been born of God does not sin. He interprets that quite literally.
But what about other verses, like where John says, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves?
He addresses that by looking at 1 John chapter 2, distinguishing between spiritual children, young men, and fathers. He suggests as believers mature, their experience of freedom from sin increases significantly.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to consider. If, as the book's title insists, in the beginning it was not so, What parts of your life, your circumstances, your health, your finances, are you now inspired to believe could actually be different?
A powerful question to end on.